All right, so welcome to this opportunity, this presentation where we're talking about coaching, what to look for, things that you might want to know about coaching as we go along. I do have a PowerPoint that I'll be showing, but I really want us not to be restricted by that. That's meant to help aid the conversation, um, not to shut it down. And so the style that we're using today, instead of having a webinar, I find webinars to be really tough where you can't really interact with people directly. And so I do want us to have more of a class feeling where you can ask questions and make comments along the way. And I will share with you what I know about coaching, which is not everything for sure. And the longer I do it, the more aware I am of what I don't know. And so I would love to get other people's thoughts. I began coaching professionally back in 2013. I think the most reluctant coach of all time. I was working with a client and they asked if I would be willing to coach some of their executives. And they were people who were good people, but they were struggling a bit in the roles that they had. And this client meant a lot to me, and I wanted to make sure that we served them well. And I told them, I took a class in my one of my graduate classes. Part of it was about coaching, and that was a few years before. If you're willing to let me give it a shot, I'd be willing to provide coaching. And they said, let's do it. And in all honesty, the experience was not great. It was one of those things where back then you had people who would get coaching when things weren't going well, and you weren't dealing with people who were on a great trajectory and they wanted to go faster and farther. This was really trying to either help them figure out what not to do or how to pad a file so that if it didn't work out, they would say, we at least tried. And back then, I would say the vast majority of coaching was like that. Well, then things began to change. And so today, if it had been 90% that's what you were dealing with and 10% not, it's completely flipped now, where I would say the vast majority of coaching is you working with high achieving people who are wanting to go farther and faster, and they are looking for a specialized approach that will help them get where they want to go. And so we'll talk about that. But I got to tell you, my first coaching experiences were not that great, and I left that coaching experience thinking this is not what I want to do. Then I had another person later say, well, could you help coach me? And I began working with people who I found fascinating. And that moved from one or two to five or 10, then to 20 or 30. And I absolutely love coaching now and never thought I would feel that way. And so every week I get to coach people from across the United States, mostly through Zoom. And I have found that my energy level about this it just continues to grow. And so if this is a profession that you have an interest in, or maybe you're a professional coach already, maybe today is something that will be energizing for you. If not, I would say to you, there is a lot of interest in coaching. There's a lot of opportunity in coaching, and we need great coaches. If we want better leaders, we have to have better coaches. And so if that's something that you want to do, there is a lot of opportunity right now, and I'd be happy to share with you what I've learned along the way. And like I've said, I've I've learned some things by you know listening well and getting good counsel, and then I've learned a lot of things by pain. And so I'm happy to share those things with you as we go along. So I'm going to put on the screen a PowerPoint. This was designed for today, and if you want to take pictures of that or use any of this yourself, please feel free to do that. This is meant to be for public consumption. Okay, so can you see that screen? Now, as we go through, thank you. As we go through, I want to make sure that you're aware that the chat option is available. And so if you've got thoughts and you don't want to speak up, please use the chat option. And if you do have a thought and you want to speak up, please feel free to do that as well. What I would love to do right now is, if you have the opportunity, go ahead and put your name and where you are. If you feel like, if you want to share where you work, please feel free to do that as well. But I'd love to just have a chance to kind of know more about who all's here. We're having people still making their way in, which is great. All right, so and if you'll tell us, some of you already told me, but for the rest of the group, if you'll also let us know where you are, that would be fantastic. Okay, so the theme for today is what you need to know about coaching before hiring one. And I want to tell you right now, I've got all kinds of bias about this, mostly because coaching is not a regulated thing. And there are a lot of coaches out there that are great at marketing, but they're not great at coaching. And so when those people get hired, it really undermines the efforts of people who are trying to be professional coaches because people can have a bad experience and think that's what coaching is. And I want to be aware, I want to just note that being good at marketing is not the same as being good at coaching. And you can be a great coach and no one knows who you are, which is frustrating. You can be a very popular coach who's also not good at it. So I want to just acknowledge that part of the reason why I want to talk about this is that I think that there are right now there's some confusion about what to look for. And I'm going to give you my opinions, and that's all they are opinions. But I also want to say to you that these are opinions that I really can say with complete sincerity. What I'm wanting to share with you is in the belief that people's lives are made better with good coaching, and people deserve access to good coaching if they can get it. And I'm just going to tell you what my experience has been. And so as we go through this, you do not have to obviously agree with me, but I would ask you just to try it on for size and be open to it to the level that you can, with the awareness that I don't have an agenda other than trying to help promote the idea of coaching. So let's go through this. I like to use the definition provided by the International Coaching Federation. I'll describe more about the International Coaching Federation later, but this is the largest association of professional coaches of all types, really. You've got executive coaches and life coaches and health coaches and all different types that are part of this. It has about 50,000 people in it now globally, and it is the gold standard for coaching accreditation, and it's something I would recommend to you. I was not involved in an International Coaching Federation for probably the first 8 years or so of my life as a professional coach, in part because I didn't think that it was needed. My schedule was full, and I thought that's what you do to show credibility, and it's a marketing thing. And I was wrong. I saw it as one thing, and it was another thing. And so the International Coaching Federation defines coaching as a thought-provoking, and I want to go through this carefully, a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them. Let me start over because I missed the first line there. Partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. The process of coaching often unlocks previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. Now, the first sentence is typically the definition entirely. The second part provides a bit more color on it. But I want to imagine with you how different your life is when you have someone sitting down with you, helping you think about your preferred future. Now, Martin Seligman, who is the father of positive psychology and was the president of the American Psychological Association for a time, really changed the future of psychology by having people think about what if we could use the same academic rigor that we use to study what is broken to study what is working. And so the field of positive psychology was born with the thought, maybe we shouldn't just use what we know to help reduce human misery. What if we would use what we know on how to study the way humans live in a way that helped us understand what was working, and we could promote more of that? In addition to that, he came up with a concept that I find fascinating called prospection. And prospection, and you can hear the word prospect embedded in it. The word prospection is the idea that we are not just shaped, that who we are today is not just shaped by what our past is. We are shaped by what we believe the future could be. So who you are today is not just shaped by your past experiences and what happened to you in childhood, good or bad, which is very important. That's a huge component to who you are. But it's not the only thing that is shaping who you are. When you consider the future and you think about who you want to be, the ideal version of who you would like to be, when you contemplate the future, the beliefs that you have about who you could become also shape who you are today. And I'll get into this a little bit more, but coaching is focused on the future. It is meant to help people think about the future and develop action steps to be able to pursue the future that they would prefer. And so we'll get into this in a moment, but I want you to see it is a partnership. And you can imagine how much better life is having someone dedicated to helping you think. Now, one of the authors I read said, there's what is called the lamppost effect. Coaching creates the lamppost effect. And what he said was, as powerful as coaching can be, the truth is, if you would talk to a lamppost for an hour every other week about the future, that would probably help you quite a bit too. And I don't love what that means, but I also appreciate what it means. Most people don't have the time to think about the future, think about where they are, where they want to go. And what coaching does for many people is it creates the opportunity to think and to think about the future. And so that partnership is meant to help people understand what their potential is and then to pursue that on a personal and professional level. So looking at coaching, a few things ICF would make sure that you are aware of, International Coaching Federation would make sure you're aware of, is coaching. Coaching is not counseling. Many coaches are also therapists, but they would have a clear distinction between when they're providing therapy and when they're providing coaching, because they're very different ideas. I think some of the most effective people that I know, some of the most, I've observed, and this is a public thing, they've talked about it. Some of the most effective executives I've been around, because I focus on executive coaching primarily. The most effective people that I've watched in their role of leaders, they have a handful of people in their life that are a part of their team, part of their circle. One of those is a counselor. I find this fascinating. So I ask people, why do you have a counselor? If it comes up casually, it's not meant to be I'm not probing, I'm just curious. And what they will often say is, I am looking for people who help me maximize time. And maybe I could sort some of these things out on my own from my past, but wouldn't it be a better use of my time if I had a counselor to help me do that? So on my own, maybe I could process this in a year. But if I had some help from someone who was trained to do that, maybe I could process it in 3 months. And I find that to be really interesting. But counseling, for the most part, not always, but counseling is typically focused on the past. What happened in the past that is keeping you from being able to move forward. And so counseling is focused in that specific way to help people process perhaps trauma or other things from their past to help them better navigate where they are today. And that's not for everything, but it's kind of the general theme. Coaching is not counseling. We're not focused on the past in coaching. Coaching is not consulting. This is something that happens a lot. You'll find someone who has been a successful executive. They want to give back. They have a great heart. And so they will finish their career as an executive, and then they will put out a shingle as a coach to provide consulting services. And so they are well-intentioned, but they are offering consulting services under the name coaching, which is not coaching. It's consulting. And I've got to be honest with you, for the first several years of coaching, I was doing some really good consulting. I had some coaching in there, but it was really not as much coaching as it was consulting, and I feel bad about it. I was doing the best I knew, but I didn't understand. And so there are a lot of good people who are consultants that take the name coach, because coach is a great name and we like the idea. But when we're talking about consulting, this is someone who has a very specific skill set that understands your specific area of focus, who is helping you because they know something that perhaps you don't know, or they can focus on something that you don't have time to focus on. But a consultant is providing you the answer. They are not necessarily partnering with you to unlock potential. They're telling you what to do. This is what you should do to solve this problem. Valuable, important, but not coaching. Coaching is not mentoring. Mentoring is also valuable. But mentoring would be someone who is on a similar path as yours. Maybe they're on the same trail as you, and they're farther down the road than you are. And because they're farther down the road than you are, they're telling you what to expect. This is what their experience was. And they are often people who are in the same profession, almost exclusively the same profession that you're in, or maybe they've had a similar type of experience, and they are sharing with you about their experience. And mentoring is in part for today. They're helping you understand where you are now and navigate your current situation. Mentoring is very valuable, but again, it's not coaching. I want you to see the difference, because if you want to be an International Coaching Federation credentialed coach, this is part of the ethical standard by which coaches will convey what they do. So if I sit down with someone who is looking for coaching, I want them to know I'm not their counselor. I'm not their business partner to help them consult. I'm also not their mentor. What I find interesting with a coach is that I don't have to be someone who even understands your profession to be an effective coach. I could argue that perhaps me not having extensive experience in your profession releases me from the bias of trying to convince you to do it the way that I did it, or towards the products or the approach that I might have had in your field. It also can keep me from telling you how I did something 15 years ago when that model may not be as helpful today. So it's not personality driven. And so when you talk about good coaches are experts in the lives of the people that they coach. They're not trying to be experts in the subject matter of the specific topic that that person is interested in. So you hear people say that all the time. Hey, I'm a coach. I've worked in financial services, so I'm going to coach people in financial services. I get why that would be a good marketing opportunity. You tend to work with people that you know. But the goal is not for you to be able to coach people because you were also in their same profession, if that makes sense. I want you to see the difference there. So moving forward with it, there are two major types of coaches: internal or in-house coaches, people who work in an organization in which they have been designated as a coach. This is the area that I am most excited about. Coaching is too expensive for most people to get access to good coaching. And so when you look at internal coaching, this is the area in which, when I think about the next 10, 15, 20 years, this is the area that I'm most excited about, because the vast majority of people in most companies would do well to work with an internal coach. They don't need to hire someone from the outside. They could do really well having an internal coach. It also allows people who love coaching to provide coaching without having to do the marketing and sales that they sometimes don't enjoy as much. This, to me, is the future of coaching, and an area that I am really interested in, and I hope that you'd find interesting as well. So an internal coach is not someone who is a manager or a director who is coaching people as a manager or director. This is someone who is a formal coach who goes into a coaching session, who has a coaching agreement with someone. I'm not coaching you just because you work for me and you can't leave the room. I'm coaching you because we have a coaching agreement. This is a formal coaching kind of thing. I want to designate that because a lot of companies will hire a company like the one I work with. I work with Strata Leadership to train their managers in coaching. And we want to be really careful. Those coaching tactics can be really helpful to you as a manager, but it's not coaching. It's coaching tactics that you're using along the way. So you have internal coaches, and then you have external coaches. External coaches are used typically with people that work in an organization where they're the high level of the organization, maybe they're the C-suite, in which they are contemplating the future and they need someone who's not part of the system to talk to. So if I am contemplating the future of the organization, and that might impact the lives of the people that I'm talking to, you can see the conflicts that would create. So for most organizations, you might have an organization that has 15,000 employees, and an external coach might be really helpful for 15 of those. I mean, you can hire them for as many people as you would like, but there is one group that this typically focuses in on, and those are the people who can't talk to the people down chain about what they're processing. They need someone who's neutral and who's not a part of the organization to talk to. And that typically ends up being C-suite people who are trailblazing what the future might be. They're trying to contemplate different things, and they need an oasis to be able to do that. So that internal coach, that's where I see a huge growth opportunity. This is a place where for a relatively um, for a lot less money, you can serve a lot of people very well. If you're interested in this, Rice University has what's called the DOOR, DOERR, DOOR, John Doerr, DOOR Institute for New Leaders. And Rice decided they wanted to focus on coaching. And so, with a $50 million grant, a gift from John Doerr, which does help, they were able to hire some incredible people to start studying what is it that helps people become more effective leaders. What's the most promising way to help develop leaders? What's the fastest way to help develop leaders? And they began looking at universities who will often claim we develop leaders, and they were trying to understand, do you really, and then how do you do it? And what they found is that most universities don't do that well, even places like Rice who thought they did. So to really look at what they were doing, they began trying to understand what's the process by which we can develop leaders, and they came to coaching. They didn't start the DOOR Institute for coaching. They came to realize that that was the fastest and most effective way to develop leaders. They began offering it to Rice students, International Coaching Federation credentialed coaches, to seniors, juniors, sophomores, that they could have access to a coach without cost. They didn't offer it to freshmen because they thought they were too young. They thought they were too young to really receive the benefit of coaching. Then they realized that was their bias. Then they began studying, is that true? And what they found was it was not true. So now they offer to Rice students access to free leadership executive coaching from ICF credentialed coaches where they can study what works, what doesn't work. I find it fascinating that over 40% of the student body at Rice now receives coaching that they don't receive credit for. It's voluntary because it makes their lives that much better. And what they're finding is that the earlier you can get coaching, the longer you can use what you've learned from it. So I want you to know about Rice because they are putting out some great data. And some of the people who are part of that, the social scientists, are providing great formulas that allow you to see return on investment, which can be a bit elusive. So check that out. That's a good place to find some of this if you would like more information about it. I bring it up because what they're finding is that coaching is also not just the fastest way to develop leaders, most effective way to develop leaders. It is also one of the most effective ways to really implement DEI at a deeper level. And so I want you to be aware of why coaching is growing so fast. The other option would be external coaches. Those external coaches that we've talked about for just a moment there, that's where a lot of people want to focus as professionals. I want to work with people from different organizations, whatever it may be, as an external coach. And that is definitely a way, if you care about people, and if you really want to make a difference in people's lives, I will tell you, coaching is a fantastic way to do that. If you love serving other people, partnering with them, if you love watching other people succeed and thrive, this is a powerful way to do that. And it's one that I just can't tell you how resistant I was to it and how grateful I am that I was wrong, because this is something that has been very powerful. Let's look at coaching, what happens in a coaching session. If you've never been a part of a coaching session, one of the first things that people might be surprised by is that the client, and that's the word that we use for people who are receiving coaching, the client determines what the coaching session is going to be about. So it is not that the coach is determining, you need to focus on this, this, and this, and I'm going to bring to you the topic. I've had two great coaching sessions this morning, and they both began with me asking where the person would like to focus, what their goal was for the session. All of that begins with a coaching agreement, a coaching contract. The International Coaching Federation provides some sample contracts that you can look at, but it sets the stage for what you can expect. Coaches do not have a privileged status like a lawyer or a religious leader or a doctor, but you can create a safe environment. But you need to tell people up front that this is a safe environment. But theoretically, if someone asked me what we talked about in this meeting in a court of law, that's something that they could request. Never had that happen, not aware of someone with whom that's happened, but it could be something. So I want to explain to them that I'm creating a safe environment for them, that what they talk about with me is confidential. And then I describe what I do. I take notes without prescribing a lot of, without putting their name on a lot of things. I mean, I'm trying to keep that pretty general, but I do take notes. I explain how it works. I explain when I might have to intervene. What we talk about is confidential unless you might suggest that you're going to harm yourself or harm someone else. Then ethically I'd have an obligation to step in. But we give the parameters of what coaching is, and then the ethical standards of you're not going to have a romantic relationship with someone that you're coaching. You're not, there's a number of things. What is different, however, in coaching than counseling is that if I'm at Target and I see my counselor, the counselor is going to act like they've never seen me before because of the dynamic of that coaching, of that counseling relationship. With coaching, the client may introduce you as their coach. The confidentiality is maintained, but they could have a friendship with you that is very different than the counseling world. Now, some of my best friends in life are people that were clients at one time. It's a very unique relationship. So we start off with a coaching agreement. This is what coaching is. Then we go into the client choosing the goal of the session. Now, I want to be clear here. When I work with executives as an external coach, I'm not asking them, what would your company like for us to talk about? I'm asking, what would you like for us to talk about? If the company has something that they would also like to have included in that, they have talked to that person and that person can relay that to me. When I first began coaching, I would go to a company, they would say, hey, we've got 5 things that we want you to help our person work on. That they had not told that person what the list was. They told me, and then I would try to have to weave it into the coaching coaching session. Not only is that not really ethical, it's not a good idea. And so what we do with that is that the coach is in charge of what we talk about in the coaching session. I don't report back to anyone the content of the coaching session. I might report back that we have met and we're making progress. Now, at Strata, we're working on some new technology to help us track the effectiveness of each coaching session. But this is something that you have to be really careful of with your ethical standards. Many coaches will use in the coaching session a model of maybe the GROW model or the GOAL model, which I think is helpful. They would take people through this conversation. What is your goal? What's reality? What are my options? And then what's the way forward? The coach is guiding the client through the experience, but the client is leading the way. The coach is assisting them. The goal model is very similar. It's what is the goal? What are your options? The action plan, and then lead the action. The desired outcome of a coaching session is an action step. It's not just a great discussion. It is an action taken. So if I sit down with someone, this is what I like to do. If I sat down with Brad or Stephen or Becky, I would say, help me understand what you would like to accomplish in our coaching session today. That would have been after our initial conversation of what are your larger goals? And my objective is to help Becky get where Becky wants to go. I may not even agree with what Becky wants to do. That's not the point. My goal is to help Becky get where she wants to go. If I'm sitting down with Stephen, I'm saying, Stephen, help me understand, what is it that you would like to accomplish today? And then I am there to help Stephen get where Stephen wants to go. Now, there's a phrase that I'll introduce to you here that I've always found helpful. It's not original to me. There's a book with this title, and if I can remember the person's name, I would tell you the author, and I can't remember it. Maybe Marsha Reynolds. But the book was based upon this idea of that you focus on the person, not the problem. And so what a coach does is he says, or she says, Stephen, help me understand what the challenge is here. I'm focused on Stephen, and this is really important to understand. I'm focused on Stephen because I believe that Stephen knows best what he needs to do. Because if I study Stephen's life for the rest of my life, I will not know Stephen as well as he knows himself. And sometimes the client has something in their head that they can't tell you. Either they're not fully aware of it, or it might be something they don't feel comfortable explaining to someone else. So I can work with an equation with the right intent, but I don't have all the factors. So if I said, Becky, this is what I'm hearing your goal is today. And now if I'm trying to get to this, what about this is important to you? And I'm letting Becky take the lead in Becky's life. Becky's the CEO of her life. I'm trying to help her be a better CEO leading her life. So I want you to see good coaching starts with, what does the client want? Now, this will happen often. You start a coaching session and I would say, Drake, where would you like to focus today? What would you like to, what's the goal that you would like to achieve today in our session? And Drake would say, I've been wrestling with that. I'm not sure. And a good coach will say, understandable. Drake, let's just sit in that for a minute. Let's see what surfaces. Because it's really important for me to let Drake decide what he wants to focus on, because I can only be successful if I'm helping Drake be successful. And so, well, wait a minute. Now, this is confession time. Earlier in my career, I would have gone into coaching with some stuff that person really needed to know. So I would say, hey, part of my job is to confront you about things that aren't working. And I would, with a great intention, give the assignment. We're going to do this. We're going to do these things. We got to do this. Once again, might have been good for consulting. It's just not coaching. In coaching, the person receiving the coaching is in charge. So if I sat down with Chris, I'm saying, Chris, help me understand where you would like to go today. Sometimes it's laser focused. Sometimes it may take me 10 minutes to get to the actual goal. But by establishing the goal, now we can do something. So a big part of coaching is helping someone determine what is it that you would like to focus on. So today I was working with a client. You don't know who they are, it doesn't matter. So I was working with this client, trying to get to the goal. Their company is working with a new opportunity that's international. So they're having to work with an area that they've never worked with before. It's very complex. It's got a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. And we're trying to get through this, and I'm trying to understand what the goal is. And so we finally get to the goal. The goal is not about how to be better at doing international business. The goal is the team that this person is leading is already at the breaking point, and we've just added another huge challenge to them, and we're trying to determine how not to burn them out. Where did we start? How do I do international business with X, Y, and Z? What was the actual goal? How do I not break the people that are working so hard right now? And she wanted to know, what do I need to do as an executive to create some slack in the system to not have my people break? It took us 10 minutes to get to that, mostly because I don't think that she knew what she was actually up against yet. But the quality of the strategy that she's going to develop is determined by the clarity that she has about the diagnosis. What's the actual problem? What am I trying to resolve? Now, I just want you to see it. And it can change from session to session. So if I sat down with Don or I sat down with Kim and I said, help me understand where you'd like to focus today. At first, that might be a little bit challenging, but as you do it more and more, they become more comfortable with being able to say with certainty, this is what I want to accomplish. Matter of fact, some of the executives will send me an email before we have our session. This is what I want to focus on today. You can imagine how great those sessions are when they've already teed it up. They're ready to go. So I want you to see how this works. I use the GROW model or the goal model or the T-GROW model, which you start off with a topic. These models are not interchangeable, but they're all useful. You may have one that you would prefer. I think it's helpful to have a structure, and I always share the structure with the client. There are no tricks here. For them to be well informed allows me to be a better coach for them. So I just express this is what we're doing. Okay, so looking at the core competencies, I'm not going to do a deep dive with this. We don't have the time, and there's not enough. We could do this for hours. But I want you to see the core competencies at their most basic level. Now, this is important to me. When you're looking at hiring a coach, it's important that they have clarity on what makes someone be an effective coach. They might have a philosophy. It may not be the ICF philosophy, but they need to have clarity on what a coach is supposed to do. I look at it as ICF has already provided that with a lot of scrutiny. This is something that's being constantly reviewed and updated and changed and modified based upon best practices. This will continue to change over time. But look at what the core competencies are. So if you wanted to be an ICF credentialed coach, you have to do 60 hours of coach training, of which 10 are with other seasoned coaches in which you're receiving mentoring, which I find fascinating. You hire a mentor to help you be a better coach. You see the value of each of these things? So you go through this and then you're learning what the competencies are, because at least 80% of ICF credentialing, the training, has to be on these topics. You're learning what the competencies are, and then you are tested on those competencies, both with a recording of what you are doing in a coaching session and also a knowledge assessment that they take you through. I want you to see what they're testing you on, that you demonstrate ethical standards. Hopefully, before too long, the world of coaching will be regulated in a way that creates a common standard. To be a profession requires a specific ethical standard for the profession. So if I want to be a lawyer, if I want to be a doctor, if I want to be an accountant, those have very specific ethical standards that go with that profession. In the world of coaching, ICF provides that code of ethics. All of this is available to you online with the International Coaching Federation in their PDF, and you can use that. That you embody a coaching mindset that is client-centered. Everything's about the client. How do we help them? I'm open, curious, flexible. It's amazing to have the freedom to listen to understand without the burden of having to listen to respond. A great coach is listening to understand because they're curious. Help me understand where you are on this. What is important about this? What is it that you are most concerned about? I'm asking what questions a lot. I'm trying to ask questions that engage thought, but I have to keep an open mind to do it. That's why coaching takes a lot of energy. I have found that I limit the number of coaching sessions I have in a given day. I will not do more than 5 if I can help it. Every once in a while I have to do 6, mostly because 5, giving people the level of attentiveness required to be a good coach is an energy drain, even if you care deeply about people. I find that after 5, I'm not even sure what my name is, much less how to help them deal with some really significant problem. So I've limited mine to 5, occasionally 6, so that I can have breaks in between. I do 50-minute sessions with 10-minute breaks so that I can reset my brain along the way. And I find that focusing my thoughts in 50 minutes allows them to get the best of me and the best, hopefully the best of them. But that maintaining of coaching mindset, I co-create the relationship. I establish and maintain agreements. If someone tells me something, it does not matter how sensitive it might be, if it's not illegal, they can count on it's going to be safe with me forever. So we go through that agreement. This is what that agreement looks like. Because here's what I'm trying to do, especially with executives. I want to create a place in which they don't have to have it all together and they don't have to perform. And they can have a place where they're not their best. And this is safe. This is a trusting environment. So we establish that agreement so that they can have that. And do you realize how hard it is to find, if you're an executive, a place where you can talk like that? Be open and say you're scared and say you don't know what to do, which is normal. This is why I love coaching, because you give people a place to express themselves fully. And my job as a coach is to remove as many obstacles from that as I can, to make them have a place where they look forward to these sessions and look forward to and anticipate good stuff. I cultivate that trust and safety. I'm just going to walk through these and not go into deep definitions of each of them. I view my role as a coach is to sometimes say things that they may not want to hear and I don't want to say, but someone needs to say it, and I take on that responsibility in a context of respect and trust. I can be honoring while also being very direct, if that's what that person needs. I'm going to maintain presence. I am not their buddy. I may be their friend, but I'm not in a coaching session. I am a professional coach, and it is my responsibility to be on my game and to maintain presence throughout and to not break from that. I want to communicate effectively by listening actively. And let me be really, really thoughtful here. Smart people tend to be horrible listeners. And people who are drawn to coaching tend to be people who are curious about other people's lives. And learning how to listen requires a great deal of effort. It will not surprise you the two worst listening professions, two worst listening professions of all professions. Number one, a worst listener is lawyer. Number two, worst listening profession is doctor. Both of those interrupt client or patient every 12 to 14 seconds. And so what we're trying to do is train people how to listen well. And you think, well, that's not that difficult. It's hard. It really is difficult to be a great listener. But what else could you give someone that shows them how much you care about them to be a great listener? I mean, what an incredible thing. All right. The final one is to evoke awareness, help them understand how things are. Leaders tend to not be as self-aware as others. You think they would be self-aware, and it's not the lack of self-awareness that they're not aware that they're of the situation they're in. They often are unaware of the impact they're making in other people's lives. They tend to be very critical of themselves, have very little self-compassion. They are very hard on themselves, and so they often view the world in a way that is surprisingly harsh. You have to duct tape them back together a lot. And so their lack of self-awareness is often that people actually think better of them than they imagine. And so we focus on self-awareness because self-awareness is the pathway to other awareness. And for me to have a better impact on other people means I'm more aware of myself and how what I do impacts who they are. Last little bit, facilitate client growth. The statement was made once that I've wrestled with is that the goal of learning is not knowledge. The goal of learning is growth. And it's semantics, but it's also, I think, true. What we're trying to do is help people grow, not just have a better understanding, but to experience life growth. And growth, however, requires discomfort. And so what I'm trying to do with the life of a person I'm a client, they need to be growing. And what you'll find is that often the growth that they experience is not in the coaching session, it's in between the coaching sessions. You're providing them the questions that provoke the thoughts that open that up, and they begin to build that confidence. Coaching industry, when people say what certificates or credentials are valuable, the coaching industry is not regulated, so anybody who says they want to be a coach can. And there are some crazy people out there who are not helping a whole lot. And so to me, it's important that you know that a credential does not make someone a good coach. It also, you could be a great coach without being credentialed. The reason that I think it's important is you're showing respect to the industry, respect to the craft. And so I recommend the International Coaching Federation. It is not the only one, but it does demonstrate to someone else that you take this seriously. Being a good coach doesn't mean you get hired. You can be a good coach and not be good at marketing. That doesn't mean you're not a good coach. When people come to Strata and we're looking at them being a coach, I will often say to them, not only you being a good coach doesn't make you someone who gets hired. The client ultimately decides who hires you, and so it's there's a lot more than just being a good coach to being a employed coach. So why do people hire coaches? They have all kinds of reasons. Typically, self-doubt. I'm not sure I'm the right person. Imposter syndrome is one that phrase is. I hope doesn't lose its power because it's used so often now. But that one, executive presence, communication, conflict. A job change, awareness that they are needing something in anticipation of a job change, succession planning, things like that typically will prompt coaching. Or you work with an organization that has decided that organizational health is a big part of it and they provide coaching for all their executives, for example. That's becoming more and more common. How much does coaching cost? The average globally is around $250. Most coaches would say that that's very low. In America, you're often going to see 400, 450 as a pretty standard amount. Um, at Strata, if we're dealing with executive leaders, that will often range from $750 to $1,000 a coaching session, which is a lot. It's also not the point of complaint when you're providing coaching that is helping people save tens of millions. I've struggled with this because if I'm going to charge that amount, I want to be sincere. I don't want someone to think I'm just coaching because of money, which is not actually my primary driver. But to be honest with you, and I'm really not trying to be self-congratulatory or a jerk about this, and I have the capacity for both. I would say charging more has made me a better coach because people don't take my time for granted. I'd also say if I'm charging $1,000 a session and I'm working with a billionaire, it's not the money. The amount of time, the amount that they make in an hour is not, it has nothing to do with what they're paying me. But I find that if you don't charge the right amount, they don't take you seriously. And they want you to be as good at what you do as they are at what they do. I have wrestled with that. I've gone back and forth because I'm the guy that would be like, someone says, I need coaching. And I'll say, well, what do you got? And they're like, I've got $7 in a Coke. And I'm doing okay, we'll make it happen. So I'm the worst at this. It actually is to the point now where I don't negotiate the price anymore because I'm bad at this. So, but I have found that I, again, was wrong. I would charge a lot less, and I think I was less effective. And so the price tag for coaching is high. But if you think about this, if you're hiring an executive coach to work with your executive team, do you really want to hire someone who's not really, really good at what they do? The consequence of giving someone access to your executive team, it is such a privilege and such a high responsibility. You want someone that you can count on. And the credentialing, the pricing, the professionalism, all of that comes together. The internal coach, the same. I want to sit down with someone in my company who knows what they're doing. They've been trained for this. And that's what ICF can provide. Not the only place, but I do believe that that's something that's worth your time. How much does coaching cost? How many sessions? The vast majority of people that I coach will do a 6-month agreement or an annual agreement, 6 or 12 months. It's really focused on what do they want to accomplish. Some people coach for less than that. They might say, we just need to coach for a month or two. I find that 6 months to a year has been a really helpful sweet spot kind of for our company. So we do 6 months, then they can continue on for a year if they would like. I prefer to do 2 coaching sessions a month with people, mostly because if they go on vacation, I don't miss out on talking to them for a longer period of time. And so if you can't meet in June because you took the family on vacation and I met you in May, now I can't see you again till July, that's a lot of time. And so I would seek to do 2 a month, even if that means we might not be able to do 2 every month. And so that's kind of my standard. I have at least one client that meets every week, and I have a few clients that just can't do twice a month. They just do it once a month. But my preference is twice a month is my preference. You can argue that different ways. I'm just telling you what I've experienced. When I've done it the other ways, I could argue that every week is too frequent, and I could argue that every once a month is not frequent enough. And so that's kind of where I am. When I'm doing my own schedule, I schedule that for 46 weeks a year so that I have time for vacation, time for the holidays, etc. And also, I would say that 90% or more of my coaching sessions are via Zoom, which I would have never guessed 3 years ago. The data on that would imply that meeting face-to-face or via Zoom, or for that matter, just a phone call, have very similar types of outcomes. You're not getting a better outcome just because you're sitting across the table from somebody else. That's your call. I found as a professional coach, I can serve people better if I'm not having to go from place to place to place or have them come to me. And so that's what I do. I've also found that allows me to serve a larger group. So the people I'm serving are in multiple states, and this gives me a chance to serve them well. When is coaching not the best option? When they're not in a position to think about the future. If they have things from their past or keeping them from being able to move forward, it is your ethical obligation to suggest counseling. And I don't think you're going to be as good of a coach when someone is really wrestling with the past. They need some time to process that. So that would not be a good one. Sometimes you have someone who wants coaching because they started a new company and they're not sure how to manage the business side of their new company. Well, that's a mentor, that's a consultant, that's not a coach. And they'd be better off hiring someone who loves helping you put together your budget. And so I would encourage them to hire a consultant along the way. Also, I find that for me, when someone is not willing to commit the time to get coaching, I don't want to commit myself to being their coach. They're not ready. And so that's just a preference, but I'm not trying to be difficult, but my time is valuable too. And I don't want to coach people who don't want to be coached. So if I've got someone who, this will happen, well, they'll say, hey, we've got 8 executives and 6 of them think coaching's great and 2 of them think this is the biggest waste of time of all time. I will work with them a few sessions to see what's going on there. And often that works itself out. And they, as they understand more, they're more open, but not always. And I think involuntary coaching is probably not real helpful. And so, there you are. Those are my thoughts. Coaching is not always the best option, but let me say it one more time. The most successful people I work with have a coach, they have a counselor, they have a group of mentors, and then they hire consultants when needed. It is not one or the other. It's all the above. And interestingly enough, I think a good coach would lead you to that outcome, often based upon what you've given them as your goal. And that's a natural progression for many people. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I went through that as fast as I could, and I still don't have as much time on the back end as I would like. But I would say to you that if you want to be a professional coach, it is very difficult to start that and immediately have a full schedule of people that you're going to coach. It takes time. And so be thoughtful about that. A lot of times people find that starting part-time or just working with 1 or 2 or 3 clients to begin with is a way to kind of ease into that. There are exceptions to every rule. But to me, if you want to be a coach, there's not a compelling reason to wait. Go ahead and start the process. If you want to be a coach that's credentialed by ICF, I would say start your training on that sooner than later, because once you've started your first training session, you can then use every session that you have in coaching towards the 100 coaching sessions required for your application. So the sooner the better, even if you're going slowly. I will also say that Strata Leadership beginning this fall is offering the training that leads to the ability for you to apply for your ICF credential, which is the 60 hours that I mentioned before. You can learn about that on strataleadership.com, but there are a number of other places that offer that as well. We've put together a faculty that I think is pretty compelling. Half of that time roughly is video-based, asynchronous, where you can do that at your own time. The rest of it is required to be live. And so about half of the experience is live with other colleagues, which I also think is a lot of fun. And so we offer that via Zoom so that you can have we have a learning platform and Zoom so that you can really interact with people from all over. So I want to stop there. I also want to put in the chat my email that I'm happy to interact with you all about questions that you may have. I am passionate about coaching. I'm also grateful to be a coach. Right now, I am uh, grateful to be a part of a great team of coaches. And so, what I found was that there are a lot of people who are great coaches who need to be a part of a team. And that's something that there are several good options. But if you want to be an external coach, just be careful that the company that you're aligning yourself with isn't one of those that will sign you up, put you on their website, but never actually provide work. Talk to some people there before you say yes, because they're even if even if it's not intentional, sometimes you'll have companies that will lock you up with an agreement with them, and then they don't provide the work, and now you're stuck. And so, if you want to be a partner with places like Strata or whatever, just do your homework and ask those questions, because there is a growing business of just getting people on your team, but not actually using them. Thank you so much. We're going to have another session tomorrow with two incredible coaches, Jeremiah Shaw, who is the president of Strata, who's based out of right outside of Steamboat, Colorado, and then also Wes Martin, who is based here in Oklahoma City. Phenomenal coach from a industrial organizational psychology background, who was learning and development for the Thunder for a number of years before he came to Strata. Both of those are ICF credentialed coaches, and both of those will be training tomorrow for that free program. We'll put this on YouTube for people to have access to later, but please contemplate coaching. This is something that is a lifelong career. You can do this for a long time and help a lot of people. The pricing I mentioned, wouldn't it be incredible to be in a spot where you didn't have to charge the maximum amount even to be able to serve more people if you want to? But then again, I could argue that you can always give people free coaching sessions without lowering your price, if that makes sense. But we need more good people who are part of this profession. International Coaching Federation has its issues, but I do believe that this is a place that is trying to really help define the future of an industry. And this is an incredible time to be joining. You're not at the pioneer stage where you have to trailblaze every step, but you are in the very early formative years where you get to help decide what that future will be. Thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to getting to know you all better. Many of you I've connected with on LinkedIn, but if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please do that. Try not to sell stuff on LinkedIn, but I do offer opportunities like this where you can have access to free stuff. Not that it's wrong to sell stuff, but you get the idea. All right, have a great day. Look forward to talking to you more if you would like to follow up. And I hope you really do have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.